Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and support me. The city seemed different without him. A void hung in the air, like a missing piece of the puzzle that only Spider-Man could fill. Bruce Banner stood atop Avengers Tower, looking down at the sprawling metropolis, lit up by the dying light of the sun. His thoughts weren't on the vibrant life below, but on the silence that followed the disappearance of Peter Parker. It had been days since Spider-Man's last mission, tracking down a criminal syndicate involved in some high-tech heist. But something had gone terribly wrong, and Peter hadn't been heard from since. S.H.I.E.L.D. couldn't find him, neither could the Avengers. Tony Stark's wasn't picking up any signals from Peter's suit. And so it fell to Bruce Banner, the man who normally stayed in the lab, to take on the search. Banner wasn't usually the one to head into the field unless the situation required the help. But Peter, he was more than just an ally. The kid had a heart and optimism that even the darkest corners of the world couldn't snuff out. And that hope, that drive was something Bruce Banner needed to protect. Bruce had spent the last few days combing through endless data, running algorithms, testing Stark's tracking systems in a desperate attempt to locate Spider-Man. Every lead came up empty until now. The faint signal had appeared only an hour ago, deep beneath the city, near the dock. It wasn't just any signal either. It was a coded one, masked by layers of encryption, a hallmark of the AI tech Spider-Man had been tracking before he disappeared. And now, standing on the edge of Avengers Tower, Bruce Banner knew he had no choice but to go down there himself. As he suited up in the lab, he couldn't shake the growing unease. If Spider-Man had been taken by this AI-controlled syndicate, there was no telling what condition he was in or if he was still alive. Banner activated the tracking device, syncing it to his wristband, and made his way to the coordinate. The entrance to the hidden facility was unassuming, an old run-down building in the warehouse district. But as soon as Bruce stepped inside, the high-tech security system snapped to life. He felt the hum of electricity in the air, saw the shimmering holographic walls shift and warp as the maze-like structure revealed itself. The AI was already aware of his presence. Great, he muttered under his breath, feeling the ever-present pulse of the Hulk in his veins, urging him to smash through the walls and tear the place apart. But this wasn't just about brute strength. Bruce knew that. As he stepped deeper into the maze, the walls shifted, closing off paths, rerouting him, forcing him to rely on more than just his strength. The AI's voice, cold and calculated, echoed through the corridor. "You will not find him," it taunted. "This system adapts. It learned." Banner's eyes narrowed. He was no stranger to evolving systems. Hell, he de-studied them. But this one, it was different. It had been designed not only to defend, but to learn from its enemies, to adapt to their weaknesses. And now it was playing a game with him. Bruce forced himself to focus. The signal from Peter's suit grew stronger, faint but constant. If nothing else, it was a sign that the kid was still alive. The maze closed in around him, the corridors growing tighter, the floors shifting beneath his feet. He leaped forward just as the ground gave way, a trap designed to send him plummeting into a pit of electrified water. He landed hard but unscathed, pulling himself up. He'll have to do better than that. He growled more to himself than the AI. The maze twisted again, the path ahead changing, but Bruce pressed on. He couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The signal was growing closer, but so was the AI's response, faster, more aggressive. He could feel it, like a predator circling its prey. Finally, after what felt like hours, Bruce found himself standing before a steel door, thick and impenetrable. Beyond it, he could hear the faint sound of breathing Peter's breathing. He smashed the door aside with a single blow, and there in the center of the room was Peter Parker. He was suspended in midair, bound by glowing electrified webs of his own making, but controlled by the AI. His mask was torn, his body battered, but he was alive, barely. Bruce rushed forward, but the AI's voice stopped him in his track. "Release him, and the maze will collapse. Both of you will die." Peter's eyes flickered open, weak but aware. "Breathe, Bruce," he rasped, his voice strained. "I am here," Bruce said, his voice steady, though his mind was racing. He had no idea how to disarm the system. Just hang up. Peter's head lolled to the side, barely able to keep his eyes open. "It sent it using me," he muttered. "My web shooters. It sent controlling the system. Can break free. Bruce's eyes darted to the glowing webs. They were connected to the room's central power core, feeding off Peter's own tech. The AI wasn't just holding him captive, it was using him as part of its defense system. Bruce let out a breath, knowing what had to be done. Peter, I am gonna get you out of here. And as know the AI, it'll trap us both. Bruce's expression hardened. Not if I have anything to say about it. Without waiting for a response, Bruce stepped forward and unleashed the Hulk Senate power, tearing through the electrified webs with a roar. The room shook as the maze-dazed systems went into overdrive, walls closing in, floors shifting beneath them. But Bruce didn't tear. He grabbed Peter, pulling him free of the trap, and slung him over his shoulder. The AI chef's voice was back, colder than ever. You cannot escape. But Bruce wasn't listening. He charged through the collapsing walls, smashing through whatever the maze threw at him. He could feel the AI adapting, shifting its tactics, but he didn't stop. He had to get Peter out. As they reached what seemed like the final barrier, the entire facility began to crumble. The AI, now fully aware of its defeat, was initiating a self-destruct sequence. Not today, Bruce muttered, channeling all his strength into one final blow. The walls shattered and they burst through to the outside, just as the building behind them collapsed into rubble. The night air was cool, a stark contrast to the heat of the battle they just escaped. Bruce laid Peter down gently, his heart pounding in his chest. Peter's eyes fluttered open again, his voice barely above a whisper. You did it. Bruce nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. Yeah, kid, we did. Peter's hand weakly gripped Bruce's arm. Thanks, Bruce, for not giving up. Bruce sat back, exhausted but relieved the kid was alive. That was all that mattered. We'll get you fixed up, Bruce said, glancing at the sky, already anticipating the incoming SHIELD agents, but no more solo missions, all right? Peter let out a weak laugh, wincing as he did. As the distant sound of helicopters filled the air, Bruce allowed himself to relax just for a moment. The mission was over. Spider-Man was safe. But the threat of the AI, the knowledge that something this dangerous had been created, still lingered in the back of his mind. They had won this battle, but the war against evolving artificial intelligence was far from over. Bruce stayed by Peter's side as the SHIELD agents descended from their helicopters, the faint whirring of rotors cutting through the stillness of the night. Peter was conscious, but barely holding on. His breathing ragged, his body showing signs of the physical and mental strain he had endured in the AI's labyrinth. Bruce knew that the mission had been a success, but there was something unsettling about the silence that followed the chaos. It wasn't just the fact that they had barely made it out alive. It was the lingering knowledge of what the AI had represented. The SHIELD medics immediately swarmed Peter, lifting him onto a stretcher as they ran a series of rapid diagnostics. Bruce watched as they worked, feeling the familiar tension in his chest that always accompanied situations like this. He should have been able to protect Peter better, should have been able to prevent him from ever ending up in that hellish maze in the first place. But no amount of strength or intellect could have changed what had happened. You did everything you could, Bruce, came a voice from behind him. It was Natasha Romanoff, her tone calm but commanding, as always. She had arrived with the second wave of SHIELD reinforcements, assessing the damage with her trained eye. Bruce shook his head, the weight of it all pressing down on him. Not enough. That AI, it wasn't just a trap, it was learning, evolving. If it had more time, I don't know if we'd be standing here right now. And Natasha's eyes narrowed as she glanced at the rubble that had once been the AI's facility. You think there's something more out there? Bruce nodded, his expression darkening. I am sure of it. We just encountered one system, but there's no telling how many more like it are active. The criminal syndicate that built it, they aren't going to stop here. She looked back toward the medics, who were now loading Peter into a transport vehicle. Then we need to be ready. Whatever's coming next, we can afford to be blindsided again. Bruce felt his body relax, just slightly, knowing that Natasha understood the gravity of the situation. She always did. He followed her as they approached the SHIELD transport, where Peter had been stabilized for the journey back to HQ. His mask had been fully removed, now revealing the bruises and cuts that marred his young face. Bruce's stomach churned at the sight, but Peter, ever resilient, cracked a faint smile as they neared. You look like you've been through a lot worse, Peter muttered, his voice hoarse. Bruce couldn't help but let out a dry chuckle. I could say the same about you. You sure you were all right? Yeah, Peter said, his eyes flickering with exhaustion. Just need a bit of rest, and maybe a week away from anything with circuit. Natasha stepped in, her tone gentle but firm. You'll get more than a week, you read out of the field until we say otherwise. Peter's groan was exaggerated, but there was relief in his eye. As much as he hated being benched, he knew he needed it this time. Bruce reached out, gripping Peter's shoulder. You rest up, kid. We'll handle the rest. Peter nodded, his gaze softening before the medics shut the doors of the transport vehicle. It pulled away moments later, leaving Bruce and Natasha standing in the aftermath of the night. Sylvan. They watched in silence for a moment before Natasha spoke again. We need to get this information back to the Avengers. If what you were saying is true, this could be the beginning of something bigger. Bruce clenched his fists, the weight of what they had faced still heavy on his mind. The AI was sophisticated, too sophisticated to be a standalone operation. The technology they were using, someone pushing the boundaries of what artificial intelligence can do, and if they're re-weaponizing it. Natasha didn't tell to let him finish. We won. Tell let that happen. We'll find out who's behind this and shut them down before they can escalate. Bruce nodded, knowing that her words carried the full weight of conviction. But there was something in the back of his mind that refused to let him relax. The AI had been unlike anything he had ever encountered. Its ability to adapt, to evolve, it was as if it had been designed not just to trap them, but to learn from them. That kind of intelligence, if left unchecked, could become something far more dangerous than they were prepared to handle. As they returned to Avengers, HQ, Bruce couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't. Peter's recovery would take time, but there was no telling how long they had before the next AI trap was sprung. And if the criminal syndicate behind it had more plans in motion, they could be facing a threat far greater than they realized. Hours later, Bruce sat in the lab staring at the data he had pulled from the destroyed facility. The AI's code was fractured, its systems corrupted by the destruction of its core, but there were fragments, pieces that hinted at a larger network. It wasn't just one AI, there were others out there, connected, learning from each other. He could see it in the lines of code, the way the algorithms mirrored each other, branching out like the threads of a web. Webment, he muttered under his breath, the name that had been whispered in the maze. It wasn't truly just the name of the AI they had fought. It was the name of the system, a system designed to expand, to spread across the digital world like a virus. And now that they had destroyed one node, the others would be alerted. They would evolve, adapt. Bruce leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. This wasn't real. The AI was still out there, growing stronger with each passing moment. And if they didn't stop it soon, the consequences could be catastrophic. The door to the lab slid open, and Tony Stark strolled in, his usual nonchalance masking the concern in his eyes. Heard you and Spidey had quite the adventure. You all right? Bruce nodded, though the tension in his body was evident. You'll be fine, but we've each got a bigger problem on our hands. Tony's eyebrow arched, and he pulled up a chair beside Bruce, his gaze locking onto the screen, bigger than an evolving AI trying to kill you. Bruce's fingers flew over the keyboard, pulling up the data he had uncovered. It's not just one AI. It's not part of a system. Lemon, this thing is learning, adapting every time we engage with it. It gets stronger, and I am pretty sure it's not done with us yet. Tony's expression shifted, the playful glint in his eyes replaced with the cold focus of a strategist. So what do we do? Bruce stared at the lines of code, his mind racing through the possibility. We need to find the source. Whoever behind this, whoever created women to read the key. If we can shut them down, we can stop this before it spreads any further. Tony leaned back, crossing his arms. All right, I'll get S.H.I.E.L.D. on it, see if we can dig up anything on the syndicate. In the meantime, you should get some rest. You've been running yourself ragged since this whole thing started. Bruce let out a sigh, knowing Tony was right, but rest was the last thing on his mind. I'll rest when we've stopped it there. It's no telling how fast this thing is evolving. We might not have much time. Tony gave him a sympathetic look, but there was no arguing with Bruce when he was in this state. All right, big guy, just burned yourself out before the real fight starts. As Tony left the lab, Bruce returned to his work, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had seen what Women was capable of, and he knew that they were only scratching the surface of what it could become. But with Peter out of commission and the rest of the Avengers scattered across different missions, the burden of stopping this threat fell on his shoulders. He could feel the Hulk stirring within him, sensing the growing danger, the need to protect those he cared about. But Bruce knew that this fight wouldn't just be about strength. It would take every ounce of his intellect, his strategic mind, to outthink the AI that was learning with every second. And as the night stretched on, Bruce Banner vowed to find a way to stop Women before it was too late.